I'm Maureen Wingham, reading an excerpt from my book, A Marriage Made in Heaven, for the Buzz Bookstore Excerpt Contest. This excerpt is from Chapter 3. One evening towards the end of 1964, Dean phoned, but again I put him off, telling him I would be busy for the next couple of months. Some weeks later he phoned again. Apparently a musician friend had a flat opposite mine in Crawford Street, and this time I capitulated and invited Dean over. It was a fateful decision, although I did not realize at the time, but it set the seal on the rest of my life. Dean was an actor, but had started out as a singer in the 50s with a band, and then moved on to work as a solo singer with various R&B bands, and toured in both the UK and overseas. He also worked on some of Jack Good's Oh Boy series. Then he went to Stanislavski Studio Drama School, and later appeared in Things Ain't What They Used to Be at Stratford East, and other projects with Joan Littlewood. He appeared in the film Some People. By the time I knew him, he was working on various commercials and other film work. However, what really interested him was songwriting. Dean did not just enter my life, he was already living with me. I learned that he had been married but just been divorced. Sometimes he would talk about it and about the baby they had that was a thalidomide baby and had died at birth. Apparently the marriage had been very stormy, and he had married because Margaret fell pregnant. It seemed that he had taken the death of the baby very badly, and apparently at that time the hospital policy meant that they would not discuss the death with him or even let him see the baby. Shortly after Dean moved in, I stopped seeing Richard. I noticed the complete contrast as Richard was very cynical, but Dean had much more soul, was much more spiritual. He would analyze the way people expressed things and could be very persuasive. Dean was about a year younger than me, and in contrast to Richard, obviously seemed very young, but on the other hand had way more street experience than me. In many ways it was a strange relationship. I was working, and although I worked from home, had to be up and about for an office hour's start. Clients want to phone early, especially if the Times had misspelt their name or left out the stockist list. Whereas Dean would surface around lunchtime, take the afternoon getting ready, and then go out in the evening. I never went with him. He went to parties, met up with other musicians, went to clubs. I never really knew where Dean was when he was out, unless, of course, he was working. Some evenings he would stay home. Shortly after he started living with me, I went away on business, and on my return he was not at the flat. It was then I realized how important he had become. I thought he had left, but eventually he came home in the early hours. This became a pattern. He would return in the early hours, and then often make himself a meal and come to bed. When I got up in the morning, I would find I had to clear up the kitchen, which really annoyed me. Although he would often promise to be more helpful, it seldom worked. Because he had spent so many years on the road with bands, his whole lifestyle was geared to late nights and not rising until late morning or lunchtime. Then would come the times when he stayed out all night. This book is available as an e-book or paperback on Amazon.